I didn't share it, so I don't think anybody will watch.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to episode 64 of Handgun Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Machad from the wild woods of central Maine, and this is your home for all the news, information, and discussion in the handgunning world. This week, I'm joined by TJ to discuss his entrance into the Smith & Wesson Model 66 world, as well as the newly announced Ruger LCR in 9mm and the Sig-Sauer P220 in 10mm. So as always, Handgun Radio is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. So how you doing, TJ?
I'm doing pretty good, Ryan. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Gonna head to work later today, unfortunately. But so we're gonna skip the week in review this time around because basically the main topic is pretty much the week in review, discussing TJ's new purchase. So we're gonna head right into the main topic: the Model 66 world and the Ruger LCR in 9mm. So TJ, you have a new addition to your firearms family, I hear.
Yep, sure do. This past week, I was kind of browsing one of the buy sell trade kind of groups on Facebook, and this guy was trying to get rid of his Smith & Wesson Model 66, and he was looking for a Glock 19, and I just so happened to have one, so made that swap with him last Wednesday. So now I'm a double action revolver owner and no longer a Glock owner.
Well, like we said, TJ contacted me. He was like, "Would you do this?" And I'm I'm a Smith and Wesson guy, so I was like, "Well, I don't know if that's the right way to word that question, TJ." But I did say that they make hundreds of thousands of Glocks every year, probably, but Smith and Wesson does not make that classic style 66 anymore. They make the new one, but I'm not as crazy about the looks of the new ones. So the older ones really are what catch my fancy.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of funny. You just kind of like, well, they make plenty of Glocks. You can buy another Glock anytime, and that's what pushed me over the edge, is thinking that I can always buy another Glock, but you might not run into this opportunity again.
So you were kind of hoping for me to say, no, keep your Glock, but it didn't work out that way.
I was more or less see if it was worth the trade, because I don't know about all the values and all that stuff.
So the Smith & Wesson Model 66 is basically it's the stainless steel version of the Model 19. It's built on the K-frame platform. Originally, when Smith & Wesson started producing .357 Magnum revolvers back in, I believe, 1935, they came out with the Model 27, which is the larger N frame, which is actually even bigger than the 686 that we all know on the L frame. It's a large handgun. And basically, the Model 19 was envisioned, I believe, by Bill Jordan. He was one of the consultants that helped with Smith & Wesson coming out with it. And he said, basically, you need a gun that can fire .357 Magnum, but does not have all the weight and the heft that you have associated with that Model 27. Because, back when the Model 27 was introduced, most cops were driving around in, these cars and stuff. And then you had beat cops, and they were mostly carrying the 38s, the police positives, and the Model 10s. And stepping up to that .357, I mean, oftentimes they didn't shoot .357 in them. They practiced with 38s, and sometimes they even carried 38s and plus P and stuff like that. But having this little bit lighter, like a heavy barrel K-frame with that .357 really helped out with, because, I mean, the cops are carrying a lot on their belts already. And back problems abound in that profession. So having a lighter handgun certainly helped out. So they came out in 1957 with the Model 66, which is the stainless steel version of the Model 19. Or actually, no, the Model 19 came out in 1957, and then the 66 came out in 1970. Excuse me. So that was the first 66 came out in 1970, and then they have the various dash numbers. Dash 1 started in 1977, Dash 2 started in 1982, and each one of those dash numbers just indicates some sort of a manufacturing change on the handgun itself. So what dash number is yours, TJ?
Mine's a Dash 1. It was made in 1981, which is, I think, as you just mentioned, the year before they changed it. And I believe the Dash 2 is where they got rid of the pin barrel and the recessed cylinder, I believe, just to save some manufacturing cost and time.
Right, and then I believe the one of the biggest changes, because when the 66 originally came out, I remember hearing about some issues with cylinder lockup after the gun had been fired extensively. Matt Ayub talked about that in one of his books, one of the greatest handgun books. I guess there's a gas ring that was on the yoke in the front of the gun there, and it would swell from the heat of firing, and it would cause the cylinder to bind up, which obviously is not a good thing if you're in a defensive encounter, especially as a police officer. So they
Right.
moved that gas ring over to the cylinder, and that sort of helped the problem. The 66 essentially in every way is, you just look at it, you can put like my 19, which has a 4-inch barrel, right next to the 66, and they look pretty much exactly the same, except for the shorter barrel, obviously, and the stainless steel construction. Now, yours came with some overmolded Hogue grips on it, right?
Yeah, some giant, sticky, funky Hogue grips that I'm planning on getting rid of pretty soon. I think the guy that I got it from he was originally intending to give me the Poshmare or whatever, however you pronounce that, grips that came on it, but he just forgot them. And like I said, I don't really care because I'm going to replace them anyways.
Yeah, the larger grips kind of I know they seem a little bit more oversized for the K-frame type guns, especially the 2.5-inch barrel like you have.
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely
I
looks unproportional.
Yeah, I have a 2.5-inch Model 66 that my dad had carried off duty, and that actually has the original factory grips on them, which, in terms of shootability, aren't much better. They definitely need a spacer in behind the trigger guard and in the front strap there. It definitely wraps your knuckles with the heavier loads.
Right, so you've just got those little the little thin wood grips that cover just the steel of the grip, right?
Yeah, it's open. They're open on the front strap and on
Uh-huh.
the back strap, and they're just basically on either side. I think they call them the splinter grips or something like that. But then the larger Model 19 that I have has the square butt on it, so it has like the flared target grips on it.
Oh, okay.
So those are a little bit better, but then again, those are a little too big for my hand. So it's kind of a balancing act, really. I find the Altamont boot grips work really well with these guns.
Yeah, I was actually planning on getting the Ultimats, not the boot grips, but a different style that had uh, a little longer grip, but not quite as gigantic as those Hogues. Plus, they won't be as sticky like the Hogues.
Right.
You don't have to worry about your shirt getting caught up and all that good stuff when you're carrying it.
Now, Smith& Wesson continued to produce the Model 66, I believe, up through 1998 and 2002, and then in 2005 they discontinued it. The Model 19 was discontinued, I believe, in 1999. Now, in 2014, they reintroduced the Model 66, but it's a very different gun from the older one. It's got a two-piece barrel. It has a little internal lock on it, which for some people is just a deal breaker. I personally don't like the looks of it, but I mean, if I have to have it, I have to have it. So the newer gun has that bead blasted finish too that I find, eh. I much prefer that brush stainless that you have on the old 66 because you can just, you can wipe it down and polish it up really nice, and it almost looks like nickel plating, really.
Yeah, it does look really nice. I know the finish on here on the newer 66s are kind of like if you buy like a 642 or something like that, just that bead blasted stainless.
Right. Now, you had a few issues when you first picked it up, and I had tried to help you figure them out, but I just couldn't. And then you spoke with someone else who was able to help you out and figure out what the issue was. So, what were the problems you were having?
Yeah, it was actually the extractor rod was getting hung up on the forget the name of the part they call it, the lock bolt, I believe. There's a piece up front under the underlug that kind of grabs the extractor rod just to keep it from being able to move around, I suppose. And whenever I would release the cylinder, it would catch on that because the extractor rod had a little lip on it. So I spoke with a gunsmith about it, and his recommendation was to just slowly take off, like with a file. I used a diamond file on my Leatherman to just slowly take off little by little, and I'd reassemble it every couple swipes and see if that fixed it. Because I didn't want to go ahead and take off too much,
Right.
and that actually solved the problem. The problem I was having though is actually, you're supposed to be able to push the cylinder release, and then the cylinder comes out pretty easily just with a little tap of the finger. But I was having to actually whack it with the palm of my hand to get it to come out, and I knew that definitely wasn't right, so I had to get it fixed up. But it's working fine now. I do have a problem now with it seems like that extractor rod is just backing out every couple cylinders full. I shot about 40 rounds yesterday, and I had to retighten that extractor rod about 3 or 4 times, I suppose. But I spoke with Matt Hoffman, and he said to just kind of get a piece of leather and wrap it around the extractor rod and get a pair of vice grips and tighten that in real good.
Yeah, that is one of the common issues you do hear with some of the, especially the K-frames. I don't hear mostly on the smaller guns, but the K-frames I tend to hear them a lot. Is where the extractor rod will actually kind of unscrew. And I remember some people saying, "Oh, you'd only want that finger." I'm like, "What are you talking about? If you're shooting with that and that thing backs out, it's gonna bind the cylinder up on you."
Right, and it wasn't backing it out so much to where it was causing that big of a problem, but I could definitely feel it hitching it, so I'd have to tighten it back up. I was tightening it as much as I could with my fingers, but that wasn't enough, obviously.
Right. It sort of reminds me of when people have said, I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, get a better trigger pull. Just back the tension screw on the front strap out just a little bit, so you take some of the tension off the mainspring." I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. You're gonna pull the trigger and you're gonna hear a click.
That's actually a pretty decent segue because I don't think I told you about this problem, but yesterday when I was shooting, I had about 4 or 5 light primer strikes, and the primer didn't ignite and setting off the round. So again, I spoke with Matt whenever I got home after that, and he said, "Yeah, check that tension screw on the front, take the grips off, and make sure that that thing's all the way tight." And sure enough, it was probably about 3/8 of a turn. So somebody had fiddled with that, thinking it
Yeah,
would do that, and so hopefully that fixed it.
that's a really, really common thing you see with these guns. What were some of the things you looked for when you actually were looking at the gun? You know, when the guy wanted to do the trade, like in terms of, I know you discussed with me things to look for when you're buying a used revolver. So,
Mhm.
what were some of the things you looked at when you were checking it out?
Yeah, I had the other day whenever I talked to you, I pretty much you gave me a good little list, and I think I covered most of them. I believe like the end shake you want to check, make sure that the cylinder doesn't move forward and backwards too much, and the rotation, make sure it locks up pretty solid, and it does lock up really nice. And one thing I had remembered Grant Cunningham had mentioned is make sure that the side plate, make sure that there's no prying done to that, because if somebody doesn't, because that you're not supposed to have to pry it, I believe. You just kind of knock it with a rubber mallet, or like a small rubber mallet, or a handle of a plastic screwdriver or something like that, and that side plate should just kind of fall off if you have the screws off. But that was one thing that Grant, I know, stresses a lot. If it looks like somebody's been prying on it, they probably don't know what they're doing, so they might have fiddled with the insides and could be dangerous. But there was a little small pry mark, but it wasn't very big, so it looked like maybe they tried and gave up, or something. I don't know. It's just not very big, so I didn't worry about it too bad. And the
Yeah,
trigger on it's really nice. So either it's been shot a lot and it's nice and broken in, or somebody had some work done to it. But I did check make sure the hammer didn't fall before it was supposed to. I forgot what you called that, but
oh, the push off.
yeah, when you pull the hammer back and if you push it and it falls down, that didn't happen. So I was happy with that.
Perfect. Yeah, that and the screw heads. Those are usually the two biggest things for me. If I look at the screw heads and they're just all buggered up, I know that someone either didn't have the proper screwdriver, or they didn't really know exactly what they were doing. Most people who know what they're doing with guns will use the right fitting screwdriver for the screw heads, because they know what kind of problems it can cause if you don't.
Right.
And like TJ said, the side plates on these guns, if you try to pry them off like you would think they would come off, you're either going to break the side plate or you're going to break your screwdriver. You're going to do both. The proper way to do it, like you said, is you're going to take all the screws off. You're going to take the cylinder out and everything, and you're going to be holding onto the frame of the gun with the grip frame facing away from you, and you're going to tap on well, in your perspective, when you're holding the gun, you're going to tap on the left-hand side of the grip frame with like the handle of a hammer, like the wooden handle of a hammer, or like you said, a rubber mallet, and that side plate should just fall right off after 3 or 4 taps on the side of the frame. So, I mean, there are a lot of things to look for, and it changes. Semi-automatics, revolvers. Still, there are little things you can look at and tell whether or not the gun has been worked on by someone who knows or doesn't know. And like you said, I mean, maybe the gun has had either some work done to it or just been shot a lot. I know the 19 my dad gave me had been shot a lot because obviously he'd been a police officer with it, so they'd qualified with it all the time. And 10 years of qualifications. That's a lot of rounds downrange, so the trigger's really nice on it, but the 66, on the other hand, isn't as nice, and he didn't shoot it as much, so you can definitely tell the difference in the usage there.
Yeah, another thing definitely checked out was the barrel. That's kind of one thing I think maybe somebody had some work done to it, not shot a lot, because that barrel is it's clean as can be. It was nice and smooth, clean. There wasn't any kind of gunk in it.
Now, when you took it out yesterday, what did you fire through at 38s or 357s?
All I had was a box of I think it was 110 grain Winchester 357 Magnum. So I didn't have any 38s, and I didn't feel like spending the extra money to buy a box of 38s when I had the 357s.
Now, what did you think of it with the 110 grain?
It actually, honestly, I can't even tell that I shot a gun. You know, a lot of times they say the 357 will beat you up, but I'm not feeling any ill effects, I suppose you could say, in my hand. It definitely didn't hurt my hand.
Yeah,
As much as people like to say, you know.
I'm sure with that 2.5-inch barrel, there was probably quite a bit of muzzle blast and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm weird too because I'm the guy who likes to go out and shoot 44 mag all day. So, but yeah, I know the short barrel, especially when I'm shooting like 125 grains out of my 66, it produces quite the muzzle flash.
Yeah, I guess maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, but I didn't really notice.
But they are fun. So basically, other than getting the grips, do you have any other plans for it?
Not right now. I might send it off to Apex or one of the other similar companies and have the hammer bobbed. I may just go try to find a replacement hammer and have that bobbed. And I figure maybe it depends. I'll get some opinions on it, but maybe while I have it there, just have them chamfer the cylinders a little bit or the chambers a little bit.
Yeah, I do like having the hammer bobbed, especially in a self-defense gun. I do like being able to keep the original hammer though factory, so that way, if you ever do decide to sell it and the person buying it, you know, oh, I'd really like to have the hammer that I could cock back for whatever reason. You know, could say, oh, well, I have it. Like it'll be included with the gun, so when you buy
Right.
it, you can just switch it out and put that back that way it is. That would be what I would do if you can find one. That is, I know they're kind of hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, I think I found a couple on eBay for a reasonable price, so I'll probably do that and have them bob that.
Now, in terms of holsters, have you looked at any holsters for it yet, or?
I haven't really looked at too many, but I think what I'm going to do is go with the, I believe it's the Alien Gear. They have their modular holsters where you can swap out the shells. It's a Kydex leather hybrid, and I believe it's leather. I forget if the backing is leather or some other kind of material, but they have the Kydex shell that's just, rather than rivets like most other people do, they're held on by screws, so you can swap out the shells, so you can have it for one particular gun and just buy a few different shells to be able to swap it out as you need. Plus, they're relatively inexpensive. I think at about $35.
Oh, perfect. That'll be great. So, excellent. So glad to hear you're now in the revolver world, TJ, and with a quality piece, I might add.
Yeah, I had it's not my first revolver, but it's definitely my first double action revolver. I had that Colt Dragoon remake, I guess you could say, that I had actually sold to Weirdbeard a few months ago.
Yeah.
I know you've had him on the show a few times, and I remember him mentioning that he was looking for one, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, I'm not doing anything with it, so I offered that up, see if he wanted to buy it, and he did. And also I have a North American Arms Black Widow, which is their 2-inch barrel single action 22 Magnum.
Yeah, I see the picture you put up on Facebook this week with Papa Bear and Baby Bear.
Yeah, that big new K-frame actually it makes that North American Arms look even tinier than it is.
So this past week I was on vacation actually. TJ messaged me, and that was the first time I found out. Ruger did another one of their Flash product sweepstakes giveaway, I guess, and announced something that I have been asking for quite some time: the Ruger LCR in 9mm. So we've been talking about a while. Didn't we do a Moon Clips episode a while ago talking about how much we wish they would come out with more Moon Clip guns with quality?
Yeah, I believe we did talk about that. I don't remember if I was on that show or if I just listened to it, but I think you had invited me to it and something came up and I wasn't able to come on. But I know Maybe I did. Honestly, I don't remember, but I know you and Matt Hoffman had talked about it.
Well, quality, you can't really do much better than Ruger, I guess. And
Right.
so they came out, they announced it's the LCR, their traditional polymer frame double action revolver, and 9 millimeter using moon clips. And the last time I believe Ruger came out with a moon clipped revolver, I mean, they have the Blackhawk and 9 millimeter with the convertible cylinder, but an actual double action defensive revolver, I think, was the SP-101 that they offered in 9.
Yeah, it seems like I heard that one didn't hang around for very long though, just maybe 3 or 4 years, if that. I'm not entirely sure though.
Yeah, I think that only hung around for about 3 years. I mean, it's a fairly the SP-101. If everybody says it's the size of a J-frame, I find that they're quite a bit bigger than a J-frame.
Yeah,
They
they
have that,
definitely look
yeah,
heftier.
definitely. So the LCR 9 millimeter is coming in at 17.2 ounces. So it's quite a bit heavier than all the other guns in the lineup. I believe the 357 is like maybe 14 ounces.
Hmm.
It's coming in at 6.5 inches long with a 1.875-inch barrel, and it comes with 3 moon clips. I believe it has the highest MSRP out of the lineup at $5.99. So you'll probably find it for maybe $5.30 or maybe even $4.99 at certain places around the country. And it looks like in some of the pictures there isn't too much information out as of yet in terms of availability and stuff like that. But from what it looks like in the pictures, it looks like they're saying that it's going to be available. It comes with 3 moon clips, like we said. And looking at the pictures, though, the cylinder doesn't have that stainless steel look to it like it did before
Hmm.
in the
I
other
haven't noticed
ones.
that.
From looking at what I'm seeing here, it looks like they went with some sort of like a blued or like I think they maybe said ion bond finish on the cylinder.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I am looking at the different models on their website, and it does look it's a little different sheen to it, I guess you could say.
Right. I mean, so what I'm seeing on here is the 38 was going for 529 MSRP. So I'm not sure if maybe there's some different manufacturing stuff that's going on in
Yeah, it
terms of
looks like
that.
the 357 with the plain grips and everything comes in at 599, and it's actually 17.1 versus the 17.2 ounce. So I guess it's not too much. It's not much heavier.
Yeah, not too much different. I know a lot of people have been saying that this would be a great backup gun for people who carry a 9 millimeter. I mean, that would be up to you. That's your personal preference, obviously. But it does handle plus P, which is good, and it looks like the cylinder, they didn't scallop it away as much as they did on the other ones. And obviously, if they've engineered the other ones to handle 357, then, I mean, 9 mil is a pretty high pressure cartridge, but, I mean, compared to 357, they're both pretty high pressure, so.
Yeah, I always thought the LCR had kind of a funny looking scallop setup, just the way it's rounded rather than most other revolvers. So I do like the way this new one looks. Just kind of touches it up a little bit, makes it look a little better. You did mention that using it as a backup for 9 millimeter other users, and another uh, handgun reviewer, he mentioned that it's kind of a odd point because, like he said, you're not going to be taking the ammo out of your Glock mag that just went down. You're not going to be taking the ammo out of that and putting it directly into your LCR.
Right.
It just doesn't quite make sense to really call it a backup for that. But one of the points that is really cool, if you go a few months ago, whenever I was kind of looking at stuff like this, I wanted a 9 millimeter revolver, and just I don't know. I guess I'm kind of weird and I like weird stuff. But I had made this little chart based on ballistics by the inch. If you've ever taken a look at their website, I went and I took similar weights of similar weight ammo in the 38, 9, and 357, and they have all the velocities labeled there. So I just kind of reduced it to some of the more um, I'm not sure,
Ba-
drawing a
bas-
blank on my head.
yeah, basically, haven't we heard before, and we've discussed this before, I think you and I, the fact that
Yeah.
a lot of the times, actually in these revolvers, people say you'll lose velocity through that cylinder gap. But some of these 9 millimeter revolvers, I know Grant Cunningham's talked about his 940 that he had fired,
Yeah.
and it actually had a higher velocity than in a subcompact 9.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure where that makes sense, but this based on these tests at Ballistics by the Inch. What they do is they take, I believe, one of the Thompson Center break action rifles, and they had a bunch of custom ones made up for handgun cartridges because they don't usually come in those. And what they do, they start at 20 inches, and then they just chop an inch off and chrono a bunch of different rounds with each barrel length, just to see where you kind of get your points of diminishing return and all that, and just your velocities and stuff. So what I did is I just kind of reduced some of the chart down to more relevant ones. So I went between 2 and 6 inches, and I'll throw this in the show notes so people can go compare. But what I thought was really cool is you can go look at the 9mm. They have a 135 grain HydroShock. Out of a 2-inch barrel, it's saying 909 feet per second. Well, if you go over to the 357 Magnum chart, they have a HydroShock at 130 grains out of a 2-inch barrel, and it's 10 more feet per second out of the same 2-inch barrel. So that's pretty interesting. Whenever you're getting a little more velocity out of a perceivably smaller package, because the 9mm is shorter. I'm not entirely sure how Ruger's doing it, if it's the same length as the 357 or not, but I would imagine it's. I'm not entirely sure, actually. Do they use the same frame for all?
It looks like, I mean, I'm looking at the pictures here, and it looks like essentially the same frame. I know the cylinders look markedly different.
Right.
The 357 mag cylinder doesn't even look like it has any of the scalloping like you see on the 38 and the 9.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm sure they probably need that extra steel to handle the pressures. But it's definitely the frames pretty much look all the same.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe it's the same size package, but I guess I'm not entirely sure. I guess maybe in other offerings it might be, like, say, if Smith & Wesson offered that, because I know I'm not entirely sure what their pocket 357 is, but basically the comparable J frame or J plus, I think is what they call it.
Right.
The 940, I think. No, I'm sorry, not the 940, but the
642.
Yeah, but the 640 versus the 642, I think they are, the 357
Right.
versus the 38. That would give you a pretty big advantage if you had a 9mm, because it's smaller and lighter than the 357, but you're getting the same velocities.
Now, one thing I've noticed, and I don't know if this is a product of actually needing to do it or if it makes it manufacturing more simple, but the cylinder on the 9mm and like the 357 basically looks the same length. And obviously a 9mm is not as long as a 38 special, so you got a lot of free bore that bullet is traveling down, but the thing is that free bore is 355 inches. It's not larger than the 9mm bullet, so you're going to not have any real gas blow by. So maybe that's the reason it's getting more velocity, because it's got all that free bore.
Yeah, could be. Interesting point.
Now, the only thing I would say is I would like to see a 9mm revolver that has the cylinder only as long as it needs to be.
Yeah, definitely. So to reduce the, like you said, wasted velocity or rifling. You have less rifling.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about it, if you have that shorter cylinder, you're going to have a shorter package overall, which obviously will be a little bit easier to conceal and it'll probably be lighter. You may lose that velocity advantage that you tend to see with the 9mm in these revolvers, but it would make for a very interesting package to have that short cylinder.
Yeah, honestly though, I'm not sure they would go as far as to shorten the entire revolver, because if you think about it, like Smith & Wesson's, their 45 revolvers, what is it, the 629?
Oh, the 625?
Yeah, 625, there it is. They're using like the 44 Magnum frames, and they just have the short cylinder with the barrel that extends kind of past the frame, I guess, if that makes sense, to get to the cylinder. They'd probably end up doing something similar to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and that's unfortunate because they could come out with a whole different size package. I mean, then you may need different holsters and stuff too, which would cause problems. But
yeah, it's probably what they're kind of trying to standardize somewhat, and then they're going to have to manufacture different parts for each one rather than just throwing the proper barrel and cylinder on it. They'd have to manufacture a new frame and all that kind of stuff, and they'd probably be more expensive because of that.
Right, and the other thing I would be interested in seeing, and I don't know if this is possible, I could very well be wrong, but the 9mm, its length, overall length, is 1.169 inches. Now, could you potentially fire 380 ACP in this gun? Because the overall length there is 0.984 inches.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I'm not sure that the moon clips would hold on to it, being that the case is smaller. Might not hold on to it properly. So you might have some kind of like it'd be resting on one end of the cylinder or something. I'm not cylinder, but on one, like be resting on the bottom of the chamber or something like that, to where you might cause some bullet shaving or something like that. Not
Either
entirely
that,
sure though.
either that, or the 9mm Parabellum is a tapered cartridge, and the 380 is straight walled.
Yeah.
So that could cause issues too.
Right, you'd
So
have a lot of free room with
right.
380. There'd be some wiggle room in the chamber, so that probably, I don't know. I guess you could maybe in a pinch. I mean, I've heard of people shooting 380s out of 9mm on accident, and it just doesn't cycle the slide properly. So maybe in a pinch you could, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I definitely wouldn't do it regularly.
Right. And then the other thing I would be interested to see is obviously the round is going to headspace. In most revolvers that shoot auto pistol cartridges, headspace on the case mouth. And so I would be interested to see whether or not you can shoot the LCR 9 without the moon clips, or if that will cause significant headspace issues. Or sometimes without the moon clips, the guns have problems actually setting off the primers reliably, so that could be an issue too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't had any experience with other moon clip type revolvers to even know.
So finally, and this was actually one I had just heard about, just probably 3 or 4 days ago, Sig-Sauer is coming out with the P220 in 10mm. So it was announced over at Modern Weapons and also on the Sig-Sauer forum, and it's the P220 in 10mm, and a lot of people, I guess, have been talking about this. I haven't heard about it, but I guess people were saying it couldn't be done, it's not practical, stuff like that. So a guy named Bruce Gray in 2007 of Gray Guns Inc. started making a 45 to 10mm conversion, and it took quite a bit of work, I guess, to get it to function reliably. So basically, they have decided to offer the P220 in 10mm, and this should be pretty interesting. I don't really think Sig-Sauer has ever offered a 10mm, have they?
Honestly, I don't know. I think I might be thinking of a Smith & Wesson now, but I don't think they have. Actually, now the 220 is their single stack 45, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this will just be a single stack 10mm.
And the 220's, I think, the only one aside from like the X5 series that you see the competition stuff they make. The 220, I believe, is the only one that's been made in single action only, as well as the double action, single action, like the SIGs are known for.
Okay, yeah, because they do mention that in this article, that they would be single action or double action, single action, which is definitely pretty cool for someone that maybe like a handgun hunter. You could just have that single action all the time, similar to a handgun hunt with a 1911.
Now, what would be really interesting is if they could make it so you could convert your 10mm to 45 using maybe a different magazine with a spacer or something like that. That would be really interesting. But from what I understand in the announcement I'm reading here, they're going to offer 3 models in 10mm. It's going to be the P220 Stainless Elite 10mm, which is going to be standard length slide and barrel, 5 inches, I believe, or 4.25. Traditional double action, single action trigger. Then they're going to offer the P220 Match Elite 10mm stainless long slide 5-inch barrel with the double action, single action trigger. And then finally the P220 single action only 10mm stainless long slide with a 5-inch barrel. So I think that'll be pretty cool. I know a lot of people really like the P220 in the single action only configuration because the safety is pretty much right in the place where a 1911 safety would be. And then you get over all the complaints about the double action, single action on the Sig-Sauer series that some people just don't care for.
Right. Yeah, I know a lot of people prefer to have that consistent trigger pull rather than having a double single.
Now, and from what I'm seeing here, also the production of these pistols is not imminent, so it's going to be a while. From what they're saying, they don't even have pictures of the prototypes to show. So I mean, who knows? It could end up being vaporware, but I thought it was pretty cool that Sig was coming out with a 10mm.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
It seems like some of the companies are sort of seeing that people really enjoy that cartridge and starting to come out with more and more.
Yeah.
So when we find out more about that, we will let you know here. So we're going to wrap this up. Anything else to add, TJ?
I do just kind of want to say, I know we didn't really have a This Week in Gun, I mean not This Week in Guns, but Our Week in Gun review, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I did actually yesterday when I went shooting at the range. They have rental guns, and they had a Glock 42 in the case. So I asked them to fiddle with that a little bit, and I was definitely impressed by the size of it, and I like size, weight, and the slide stiffness, I guess you could say. A lot of the smaller 380s have really stiff slides, and this one didn't seem to. But the trigger, on the other hand, was I'd say a little stiffer than my other Glocks that I've experienced. I don't know if you had the same experience whenever you shot yours.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, I think maybe the trigger, the difference in the trigger feel maybe has something to do with a lower mechanical advantage where it's a smaller gun.
Yeah, just a
Um,
different pivot point and all that.
right. Yeah, no, the 42s I really like, and I'm pretty sure there are people making trigger packs for them already, I believe. So
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I know people tend to jump on that.
excellent. So we're going to wrap up the main topic and head into the obscure gun we want segment. So TJ, what do you have for an obscure gun this week that you'd like to see made? Since Ruger's coming out with all these things, maybe they'll make it for you. Maybe they'll listen.
um, one thing I thought about maybe more companies. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 32 NAA, their proprietary bottlenecked 32 caliber
Love them, the 32
round.
and the 25.
Yeah, they have their bottleneck from a 380 down to a 32. I want to see more companies come out with more compatible guns with that, and I believe I think it could be kind of like the 357 Sig is to the 40. It's got more velocity and a smaller round, but when you look at the ballistics for it, they're just way better than definitely a 32, and then it even offers advantages over the 380. So maybe not anybody in particular, but I do want to see more people come out with guns in that caliber, which wouldn't be difficult because the magazines are the same magazine as a 380, so all they'd have to do is swap out maybe the barrel and the recoil spring.
Well, imagine like a Glock 42 conversion using that. That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the biggest things I had thought about whenever they introduced the Glock 42, and I was like, all right, the first thing Lone Wolf has to do is make a 32 NAA barrel for it, and they haven't done that yet, but I'm sure eventually if they get enough requests, they'll make one.
It's too bad there's not more ammo availability for those too. I like the 25 one too, because a lot of people, deride the 25 ACP. Oh yeah, it's crap, which it pretty much is. But I certainly would not want to be shot by one. But that bottleneck, they take the 32 ACP case and neck it down to 25, and from what I've seen in like gel tests and stuff, so it's pretty impressive, especially out of those small barreled pistols that NAA makes.
Right, and one of the things that's kind of one of my biggest blockages, I guess you could say, about getting into this cartridge is, like you said, there's not many people that make ammunition for it. But I believe if more people got into making guns for it, more people would get into making ammo for it, because it is like a Sammy Spec official cartridge. Just nobody else makes it but Corbon and Hornady, I believe.
Right.
And they don't have plinking rounds for it. All they have is defensive rounds. So you gotta spend, 30 bucks per 20 or something crazy like that just to practice with it.
Right, and after trying to load 32 ACP, I can't imagine trying to reload that ammo would be very fun.
Yeah, I know a lot of people stay away from reloading the 357 Sig just because of that bottleneck. I couldn't imagine. And then at the same time, a lot of people stay away from the 380 just because it's so small. So it's kind of both situations in one.
Right. So since Ruger's doing their little product giveaway sweepstakes and they haven't yet announced what the last one is going to be here, I'm going to say I want to see Ruger bring back the PC carbine series in 9, 40, and 357 Sig. Now, they did not have it chambered in 357 Sig, but they did have it in 9 and 40, and maybe 45 if I recall correctly. And it used magazines from their pistols, I believe from the normal, like the I can't even recall the name of the older pistols, the big blocky ones, the P89 and those. Yeah.
P89s. Those.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to see them bring back something like that, except maybe using the magazines from the SR pistols.
Yeah, I could see that really taking off, especially since those SRs. Honestly, I think they're doing pretty well in the market right now.
Right. I mean, they're a pretty great polymer pistol for the price you're going to pay for them. So having a compatibility with the magazines you already have, and the mags aren't terribly expensive for those. I mean, they're certainly less common like Glock magazines and stuff like that, but I couldn't really see Ruger offering a carbine that takes Glock magazines.
Yeah, I don't believe that would happen.
So that would be what I would like to see, and like I said, a 357 Sig carbine I think would be a real screamer. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I know Ruger doesn't even make one, so it might be even farther off the charts. But I think a 10 millimeter would be pretty sweet in one of these type packages.
That would be a great like short range deer gun or something like
Yeah,
that.
little 16-inch barrel, just kind of carrying it around in some thicker brush type hunting situations. It'd probably be pretty nice.
Right. Excellent. So we're going to wrap up here. Be sure to support our sponsor, Caliber Coffee, by visiting calibercoffee.net or clicking the banner on the right-hand side of the page for more information and to place an order. Don't forget to shop Brownells using our affiliate link, handgunradio.com/Brownells. Be sure to go like Handgun Radio on Facebook and share it with your friends. And also leave us a review on iTunes. It helps the show in the iTunes standings. Be sure to listen to all the great shows on the Firearms Radio Network, including the Power Factor Show. And be sure to visit the Firearms Insider for reviews and more awesome content. And also, if you're interested in writing reviews for the Firearms Insider, please email tj@firearmsradio.tv. Be sure to check out the Firearms Radio Network on YouTube. And also, we got a holster giveaway going on with Shan over at Works Holsters. There's a link there in the show notes. So I'm going to announce that after we finish the wrap-up section, and we can tell you how to get entered into that giveaway. And it'll probably go on for 3 or 4 weeks, so that way everybody has plenty of time to get everything in. So TJ, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you discussing your new purchase and how you've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it over the past few days.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ryan. I'm definitely looking forward to plenty of years shooting this thing.
And the best part is, it will be around for plenty of years.
Yep.
So excellent. Well, until next week, have fun and safe shooting.